Hello. In this lecture, we are going to discuss cultural origins and historical background of Southeast Asia. We are going to discuss prehistorical cultures, South Asian influences, Chinese influences, influences from Islam, the colonial age, and independence. Prehistorical cultures, these mainly refer to the indigenous culture. Southeast Asia was occupied by humans since the earliest times. There are ancient humans who were active in Southeast Asia. This Java man here was very famous, who lived in today's Java 2 million years ago. Since 2003, scientists also discovered another group of humans which they eventually termed Homo floresiensis, or Flores man, because they discovered the skeleton remain of this group of people in Flores Island, right here. But the scientists are not quite sure their connections with the rest of the population. Those are the small-statured people. The scientists are not sure that whether they are just regular other ancient humans who become small, they have some mutation when they arrive in an island environment, or they are simply a different species. So there's some uncertainty there. Modern humans arrived in Southeast Asia from Africa about 50,000 years ago. And these people are similar to Australia Aborigines and the Melanesian people. There are some cultural sites that are discovered in mainland Southeast Asia that closely relate to those people. And those cultural sites that are discovered in mainland Southeast Asia are termed as Hobbesian culture. So those are the hunters and the gatherers somehow relate to those early migrants from Africa. Today, there are still some isolated areas in Southeast Asia where there are groups. Those groups maybe relate to those early hunters and gatherers. And those are the places some places in Thailand, Vietnam, and Laos in those mountainous areas. But also there are places in the Philippines where those groups live. Here the pictures at the bottom are the reconstruction of the Hobbesian hunters and gatherers. There are also evidence that shows that there are migration of people from present-day South China through land to mainland Southeast Asia since 25,000 years ago. But also there are migrations from present-day South China to maritime Southeast Asia through Taiwan here, through Taiwan. And this group of people, when they come out from South Asia, from present-day South China, they come to Taiwan. Then they migrate to the Philippines, then spread to a vast geographical area. To the west, come to the Madagascar. To the east, come to the Easter Island. To the north, come to the Hawaii Island. The languages of those people speak belong to Austronesian language family. So they migrate out of Taiwan 5,000 years ago. So those migrations from present-day South China eventually brought rice growing culture to the region. Also, they brought the new language to the region. So in addition to Austronesian language, there are also Austroasiatic language family that was spoken in mainland Southeast Asia. During the historical times, there was strong influence from South Asia. There are many Indianized kingdoms throughout the region of Southeast Asia historically. Those Indianized kingdoms are either Hindu kingdoms or Buddhist kingdoms. We know from previous lectures that mainland Southeast Asia was a stronghold of Theravada Buddhism. It received influence from Ashoka, and since the 13th century, Theravada Buddhism firmly established in the mainland Southeast Asia. Today, there are sizable South Asian communities in large cities of Malaysia, also in Singapore. The writing system in Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos are strongly influenced by culture of South Asia, because during ancient times, the Sanskrit writing system arrived in mainland Southeast Asia. So today, they are still remain part of the writing system in mainland Southeast Asia. Here are a few examples of early Indianized kingdoms, Hindu kingdom or Buddhist kingdoms in parts of Southeast Asia. The Shiva Empire here, the Khmer Empire here, Burma kingdoms here, the kingdom of Ayutthaya here, and the Majapahit Empire here. Now, Shiva Empire centered in present-day Sumatra Island. In this, the capital city is Palembang. Here on this slide, you see a few pictures. This is a very famous Hindu temple complex in Prambanan, Java Island. Borobudur Buddhist temple complex. We saw this picture in an earlier lecture. Here is a Buddhist temple complex in Jambi, Sumatra. So these are all evidence of the early Indianized kingdom. Also, the Khmer Empire existed between 9th to mid 13th century in present-day Cambodia. The famous Angkor Wat is a Hindu temple complex built in Angkor. It is a state temple and also part of the capital of the Khmer Empire. Today is an extremely famous tourist destination of the country. The Burma kingdoms come into two main empires. One is the pagan kingdom, which was labeled as the first Burmese empire. It united Burma as a national state, as a nation. Here, the capital location is pagan. So this is the location, extent of the pagan kingdom. After the collapse of this first Burmese empire, then we see the rise of the second Burmese empire, the Tangu Empire. The Tangu Empire's capital city switched a few times. Okay. So on this picture, we see some architectures from the pagan kingdoms and the Tangu Empire. The kingdom of Ayutthaya, which is centered in Ayutthaya, present-day Thailand. These are some ancient architectures from this kingdom. Majapahit Empire, centered in present-day Java Island. Okay. And these are some ancient architecture from this kingdom. In addition to the influence from South Asia, there are also strong influences from China. And during ancient times, Chinese called Southeast Asia Nanyang. So Nanyang means in Chinese the South Sea, the South Sea. So there's a close connection with this region since ancient times with China. And China all colonized Vietnam for nearly 1,000 years. As a result of Chinese colonization in Vietnam, they left Confucianism and Mahayana Buddhism. Here, this picture at the bottom left shows a temple built in 11th century in present-day Ho Nei, Vietnam. This temple is dedicated to Confucius. Southeast Asia also has very frequent trade relations with China in ancient times. You have this Chinese person by the name of Zheng He during the Ming Dynasty. He led a few voyages to Southeast Asia to have trade and commerce activities. So this map shows the voyage routes of Zheng He's fleet between 1405 and 1433. So that's not only come to Southeast Asia, but go way beyond, go to South Asia and go to the Middle East and Eastern Africa. There are also constant immigrants from present-day South China and peaked during the colonial era. Europeans brought a lot of Chinese from South China to their colonies in Southeast Asia to work in plantations or mines. Today, in many urban areas of Southeast Asia, there are cohesive Chinese communities. Chinese people in Southeast Asia seem to be thriving, particularly in business and commerce and banking. And there are some fairly large Chinese populations in Malaysia. A quarter of the population in Malaysia are the Chinese descendant, and 75% of population in Singapore are Chinese in ethnicity. Influences from Islam. Islamic traders arrived in Southeast Asia after 8th century. Then Islam as a religion was adopted in Sumatra during the 12th century, and then spread to other Sunda islands, and also to southern Philippines, also southern Thailand. As a result of the spread of Islam, Hinduism faded in maritime Southeast Asia, except in a few islands, such as Bali Island and Lombok, but also there are Hindu communities in some major cities of Southeast Asia. Orthodox Islam today is practiced in northern Sumatra and Brunei. They adopt this Sharia law, very strict interpretation of Quran. In recent years, we also see the rise of some fundamentalist elements in Malaysia, Indonesia, and the southern Philippines. Here is a slide that gives an example of the influence of Islam during modern times. You have this Malacca Sultanate that exists between 1400 to 1511. And this is one major Islamic kingdom in during modern time of Southeast Asia. It's centered in present-day state of Malacca of Malaysia, centered here, but it covers this large area. And this picture shows a replica of the Malacca Sultanate palace. The colonial age. The first European who came to Southeast Asia were the Portuguese. Later on, they were followed by other European colonial powers, the Spanish, the Dutch, the British, the French. Initially, the Europeans came here, many want to get hands on the trade with spice. Here, the group of islands called Spice Islands. They have some very unique spices that are demanded by the Europeans. Later, they also began to control island for commodity production, cash crops, mining facilities. So the Portuguese initially defeated the Sultanate of Malacca and occupied this territory. And later on, the Portuguese was defeated by the British. So the Portuguese just only concentrate on their colony in Southeast Asia, in East Timor. The Philippines was first controlled by the Spanish, and after a war with the American, the control was switched to Americans. So the Philippines changed from a Spanish colony to an American colony. The Dutch controlled the present-day Indonesia. The British control Myanmar, along with Malaysia and Singapore, Brunei. The French controlled Indochina, with Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. Thailand was never become a colony of any European power, but Thailand was cut in size by the colonial powers and served as a buffer zone between the British Empire and the colonies of the French. So it lost some provinces to the British, especially in the south, and here also lost some land to the French as well. During the World War II, the entire Southeast Asia was occupied by the Japanese for a brief period of time, with become the sphere of influence of Japan. Of course, some countries in Southeast Asia really not a colony of Japan. They are politically allied with Japanese, such as Thailand and Burma. So politically, they are on the same side with the Japanese. Only they on the later part of World War II, they switch sides to the Allied side. But on the early part, they are on the same side with the Japanese. Due to the colonialism, we see the Christianity come to Southeast Asia. So there are two countries in Southeast Asia where the major religion is Christianity: the Philippines and East Timor. Catholic is also a relatively big minority group in terms of religion in present-day Vietnam too. There are also some tribal groups in uplands of mainland Southeast Asia and mountainous areas. They are also Christians, but in those areas, those groups also mix with some animist, traditional religion in the region. Independence. After World War II, most colonial powers returned to their colonies in the region, and independence took place either through peaceful arrangements, such as the British, the American colonies, or wars, such as the French and the Dutch colonies. East Timor declared political independence from the Portuguese in 1975, but very quickly was invaded by Indonesia and occupied until 2002. Eventually, they become a truly independent country. Here is a list of countries where when they obtained political independence in the late 1940s. The Philippines, Burma, and Indonesia become politically independent. In the late 1950s, Indochina, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia become independent. And in 1963, a few British colonies in Southeast Asia the western part of Malaysia and the eastern part of Malaysia along Singapore formed a Federation of Malaysia. But after a few years, they feel that they cannot get along, especially Singapore and Malaysia cannot get along. And eventually, in 1965, they split into separate countries. In 1984, Brunei became independent, and 2002, East Timor eventually became an independent country. In summary, in this chapter, in this lecture, we discuss history and cultural origins of Southeast Asia. Similar to South Asia, cultures in Southeast Asia are also a product of contributions from various sources through historical times. Both South Asia and Southeast Asia have an accumulation of indigenous Hindu, Buddhist, Islamic, and colonial influences. These influences contribute to countries in both regions being divided along Hindu, Buddhist versus Islamic line, with the exception that Southeast Asia also has Christian countries. Another exception is that while the British was the predominant colonial influence in South Asia, Southeast Asia was also divided, also seeing the occupation by other European colonial power and also colonial power from the United States. Thank you very much. I see you next time. Goodbye.